About a year ago, I made a video about this guy right here. This is the MagFlott iPad stand. This is a magnetic iPad stand that you can just attach an iPad to. It was a lot taller than the other options that were out at the time, or that had just been announced at the time. And it was something I was really excited about. It was a really awesome idea. It was super adjustable, rotates, tilts, all the great stuff. But my one complaint about the MagFlott, and I don't even know if it was a complaint, maybe criticism is the best word, is that it was not adjustable height-wise. It was just this height, didn't get any taller or shorter, depending on your needs. Well, Chargin, the company behind the MagFlott, is back with 2 new iPad stands that solve that criticism. This one right here is the MagFlott Pro, and then I also have a MagFlott VESA stand as well. Both of these are pre-production units, but they're finalized pre-production units. They were sent to me to review. Let's start by talking about the MagFlott Pro. So this guy right here, it's very similar to the original MagFlott design. It attaches to the iPad magnetically on this casing right here. You can rotate it, you can tilt it back, has all those adjustments the regular MagFlott has. Just like the original one, you can rotate it into portrait mode, so you can use your iPad in portrait mode if you like. And it also has a really solid base, so when you're tapping on the screen, there's no wobble. But there are a few key differences with the MagFlott Pro. So the first being, there is now height adjustment. So on the back, there is a screw that you can loosen and lower and raise the MagFlott Pro. If you prop it up all the way, it gets to about 17.25 inches from the base to the top of where the iPad sits. For those that use a better measurement system, that's 43.82 centimeters. Now, comparing that to the original MagFlott, which is just 12 inches or 30.48 centimeters. My other favorite iPad stand is the Lab 22 Infinity Adjust iPad stand, and that one's only 10.75 inches from the base. Now, if you want to use the MagFlott at its shortest point, that's about 12 inches, which is the same as the original MagFlott. So if you feel like this is the height that you need, you could probably still just get the original MagFlott. The real benefit of the MagFlott Pro is for people like me that are tall, that need their iPads raised up when sitting at a desk, so it's a bit more ergonomic. So the range for the MagFlott Pro is from about 12 inches to 17 inches, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when sitting at a desk, that makes a big difference. With the MagFlott Pro, I'm able to line it up with the top of my studio display monitor, so I have a much more ergonomic setup. That being said, when I am working at my desk, I still have to put the MagFlott on my monitor stand to get it to the height to match my studio display. Now, the studio display I use has both the height and tilt adjust. Because I'm on the taller side, my studio display is up quite a bit higher. So if you're not really tall, this may not be an issue for you. I'm 6'1", 6'2", right in that range. So I need to be able to get the MagFlott Pro to line up with the top of the studio display. So in order to do that, I have to set it on the monitor stand, put it up almost to its max height, not quite, and that will get the 2 tops of the displays lined up together. That way I have a bit more of an ergonomic setup when working at my desk. The mechanism for adjusting the height is very good. Again, just loosen it, it slides down, raise it, tighten it wherever you want it to go. Super straightforward. What's nice about this is once you have it set up, you never really need to adjust it again. It's not something you're constantly going to be moving around. Honestly, once I got it all set up, I didn't adjust it until I started doing the measurements for this video to kind of like figure out what the range of heights it can do. Because of the sliding nature of this, it loses out on one of the great features of the original MagFlott, and that is cable management. The original MagFlott has a hole in it, so you can just put a power cable or a Thunderbolt cable or whatever through. This one does not work like that. The slot on this guy isn't wide enough in order to fit a standard USB-C or Thunderbolt cable through to get to the iPad. So what I did is I put a cable hook on the back, so that way I could just run a cable up the back side of this and plug it into the iPad. It's really not that big of a deal, but it is kind of a bummer that there is no cable management. But just looking at it, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how I would engineer it because it has the screw mechanism to slide the MagFlott Pro up and down. So I just got these little cable clips. You can get them at any hardware store or Amazon or whatever, super cheap. Like, they do not cost very much money at all. I just ran a cable up it and called it a day. Another interesting change about the MagFlott Pro is it's not just limited to the iPad anymore. If you have an iPhone with the MagSafe connection, I believe that's the iPhone 12 and newer. Don't quote me on that. Double check that. But if you have that, you can take your iPhone and clamp it right there. That's really cool. It's not something that I think I would use a lot because I have iPhone stands I keep on my desk, and I would much prefer to have my iPad on this. But if you have like an iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max, you could use the always on display to see, complications and calendar appointments and notifications and stuff like that. But what's also a really cool feature, if you set this next to a Mac, you could, turn it sideways and connect your Mac to the iPhone and use that as the webcam via continuity camera. And this way you could just use your iPhone as a webcam without needing to get like a tripod or a tripod mount or any of that stuff for the iPhone. You just attach it right there. You could have your call and it works. Super nice. Overall, I see the MagFlott Pro as a big improvement over the original, especially if you're, tall and you need that extra adjustment and you want to get it to a much better height. It's a really nice touch that it has the adjustable stand and that it's easy to adjust. It's not something that you're like having to like disassemble the thing to adjust it. It's a bummer about the cable management, but like I showed, it's not hard to fix. I did this thing with, I don't even know, like the bag of these cable management things is maybe a couple of bucks at the absolute most. So it's not the end of the world that it doesn't have it. It's a bummer that it doesn't have something built into it. But the iPhone feature, that is a nice touch. The second MagFlott stand is the VESA stand, and this is an incredibly nice touch. And I actually think this will end up being the default for a lot of people. This is just the plate. So you have the screws. It'll connect to any standard computer VESA mount. I know I say VESA weird. Everyone always makes fun of me when I say it. I say VESA. I know it's VESA, but whatever. But it'll connect to any standard mount. So that means it could be a wall mount, a monitor stand mount, whatever. It'll connect to any standard VESA mount. So this really makes that the ultimate adjustable iPad stand because it can work with any mount. That means you could put it at any height. You could screw it into the wall if you want. You could put it landscape. You can put it in portrait. You can put it whichever way you want. It works just like the other MagFlott stands where you attach your iPad magnetically. You can work on it, and of course, just like the MagFlott Pro, it has the iPhone capability if you have an iPhone that supports MagSafe. Since my move, I no longer have a big window behind my desk anymore, and I kind of want to do the thing where you can take your studio display to the Apple Store and they'll like swap out the mount on it. I kind of want to get the VESA mount, and so I can mount it on the walls, put the cables through the walls, make it look really nice and clean, and then put this guy next to it, because that would be a really clean looking setup. That would be a really nice setup. I'd really like to do that. It's kind of a pain. I don't really just want to go through the process of having to drag a studio display all the way to the Apple Store. Like, it doesn't sound like fun to me. But that is a setup that I'd really like to do. The other thing that you could do if you don't have like a wall mount monitor setup, or you can't mount something to the walls or whatever, is you can get one of those dual arm VESA stands. So you can attach this guy to one and then the monitor to another. And that would also look really nice as well. I could theoretically do that, but I would rather have it on the wall. To me, these iPads make your iPads useful even when they're not being used. I have my home screen covered in widgets with different information: task management, calendar appointments, weather, deliveries, like all sorts of different things, time tracking, shortcuts, all sorts of stuff that I can access whenever I'm just sitting at my desk, whether I'm working on my iPad or I'm working on my Mac. Because even when I'm working on my iPad plugged into the external monitor, I really don't use the iPad screen. I pretty much just focus on my main monitor because that's where all the information is. That's where everything's nice and big. The iPad's just kind of off to the side, so it just kind of acts as a dashboard of widgets for me. Same thing when I'm working on the Mac. I still have my iPad next to me, and I just treat the iPad as like a dashboard of information that I can access. And with universal control, I can move my Mac mouse and the keyboard attached to my Mac over to it and interact with things if need be. But most of the time, it's just like, hey, what's next on my task list? Hey, do I have any appointments coming up? Or like, what's my time tracking status or things like that. Just having these kinds of stands next to me on my desk really helps me in bridging the gap between when I'm working on the Mac and the iPad, or when I have an iPad plugged into my monitor, because I don't really want to use the Magic Keyboard and mouse. I like my fancy mechanical keyboards. I've been covering the iPad for a really long time, and I've been covering a lot of iPad stands lately. So just boiling it all down, what are the iPad stands I would recommend? And honestly, there's 3 of them, and it's based on different contexts. After all, the iPad is a computer that can switch contexts, so it really depends on how you primarily use your iPad. If you primarily sit at a desk and plug it into a monitor or use it next to a Mac, and you're just sitting there working with a keyboard and mouse, I would go with the MagFlott Pro. This way you can just have your iPad next to you, you can attach it magnetically, plug it in, you're all good to go, whether you're plugging it into the monitor or you're just plugging it in to charge it, whatever. It all works, universal control, all that stuff. I've covered it 100 times. It works really well. If you have your monitor on a VESA stand already, depending on what stand you have, I would either swap it out for the dual arm stand or wall mount them, depending on your situation. I would try and go wall mount first because you can make that look really clean if you're able to drill holes in the wall and drop cables through. But if you're somebody that uses your iPad as more of a secondary device, like a reference place where you keep documents or information up while you're working on like your Mac or PC or something like that, or if you're somebody that uses the Apple Pencil to handwrite or draw a lot, I would recommend the Lab 22 Infinity Adjust Stand. What I like about this one is you can get it down low, you can put it next to you, so it makes it really easy to just mark up a document or a PDF or sketch something out with the Apple Pencil. It also works really well as a reference document stand because you can rotate it, move it around in so many different angles. It works really well for that situation. Honestly, all of these stands are excellent. You can't go wrong with any of them. I like all of them. I've been rotating them around in my office here quite a bit, and I can't just pick one that I think is like the best. It all just depends on the different context that I'm in. So that's why you kind of just got to think about how you use your iPad. For the MagFlott Pro and VESA stand, there is a Kickstarter that is already live that I will link to in the description below. When the Kickstarter wraps up, I'll swap out that link for the permanent sales page. I've only ever talked about a few Kickstarters on this channel, and it's always been from established companies that I trust and trust them to fulfill the actual product and not take the money and run. So I'm very careful about Kickstarters I talk about. Chargin did the original MagFlott via Kickstarter. They've done a bunch of other products via Kickstarter. They are a reputable company. They actually have a reputation behind them. So that's why I trust them. The other one that I talked about was the Moment Lab 22 one. That all got fulfilled. That's behind the Moment people and my friend Sarah Dici and stuff like that. So yeah, I trust these to get made, but if you want to wait it out, I'm sure there will be a normal like, hey, give us money and we will send this to you in a couple of day process later on. I'll put links to everything else in the description below so you can go check it out. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.